Splatoon 2's launch just never seems to slow down. After the drastic decrease in main weapon power and the most accessible broken weapon in the series history, we now move on to arguably the most game-breaking patch ever made. I don't even know what else to say. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes of this series, and let's get into it. So we already covered Tri-Slosher, Ink Armor, Inkjet, and all the points for special nerfs before, but the buffs were just something else in the patch. Here's all the major ones to note, which is 4 specials. The least harmful of these changes would be the Splashdown. This special now rises higher into the air, was made faster before it hits the ground, and dealt more damage on its outside hit, which now gave it a consistent combo with 2 outside burst bombs, even if you wore bomb defense. In addition to that, the points for special on various Splashdown weapons would also be decreased. Yes, all of these buffs happened at once, get used to it, this is going to be a pattern here. Splashdown also isn't even a joke at this time either, since with some different netcode changes, it wasn't consistent to shoot the Splashdown user down at this time. These buffs most notably worked a great deal with Vanilla Blaster, giving it a damage combo, and Vanilla Splatter Shot, which, remember, could still just throw 3 burst bombs for easy combos after its Splashdown. This would be more important later on, but wasn't a big deal yet. Inkstorm was up next, which gained a 13% larger radius, which, given how large Rain already was, and, you know, radius into diameter being much larger than you're gonna think it is in your head, this means that Inkstorm is now giant, which is more paint and more area denial. Like with Splashdown, this special also got cheaper on various weapons, such as a 170 on E-Liter and 160 on Brella. Yeah, that's right, by the way. We're at 160 points for special at its lowest, and 230 at the highest. What a mess, man. And none of these specials were anything compared to our next 2. The first of which is Stingray. This special was pretty pathetic until now due to being insanely precise, but now it gained its infamous shockwaves, as well as a half second of extra duration, just in case. The infamous GG Ray has finally arrived, and would be known as the most broken option ever added to the Splatoon series. This would of course immediately put Ray and some weapons with it in the spotlight. However, that's not even the most prominent special of this patch. The new meta would be dominated by Baller. After already getting a solid HP increase in the previous patch, it got way more changes here. That would include another flat 33% HP increase, reduced knockback when you're shooting it away, painting more, having a larger damage radius, and doing more damage, and now doing knockback. All of those changes in a one patch. This turned Baller into a tank with an easy explosion combo to work off of, and I mean, basically nothing could stop it. There were some other smaller changes in this patch. It's worth noting that beacons are finally no longer a 90% sub, and Sprinkler went from 80 to 70 with a decent painting buff, which did help a few weapons with those subs. Anyway, with all the notes finally out of the way, let's take a look at the completely new 1.3 meta. Let's start off with Stingray weapons, the most notable of which would be Sloshing Machine. Sounds normal, but back in the day, this was actually the very first time Machine entered the meta. The main weapon was pretty solid at bullying short-range options, and what's most notable at this time, other than of course having its old fire rate, is that the explosion actually painted quite a bit for trapping opponents or helping to get its ray. Remember, this is 170 at the time. Its weapon kit was also pretty solid. Autobomb was a decent sub it could use often and gave it some location utility, but as you might guess, it having Stingray is the main reason it saw use. It would not be uncommon to see 1 or 2 machines in most matches, as even with Ray not being on an anchor in this case, which would synergize better with the special given its ultra defensive positioning, it really just didn't matter with how broken Stingray was at the time. Machine got a decent amount of them, and the main weapon itself was also pretty good at controlling objectives, especially with the tower and tower control. There were a few other Ray weapons that saw use. Most notable would be the Splat Charger and Heavy Splatling. Charger painted a lot better back then and mostly outclassed Heavy since it got its buff back, but Heavy's Ray output also wasn't completely terrible. Still though, if you wanted a backline with Ray, Charger got it plenty fast. The other main meta option of this patch is f***ing Aerospray. Yeah, Aero was not a special main weapon in any way other than paint, but it did have the buff Sprinkler and the fastest Baller output in the game. And like I said, Baller could basically do anything it wanted. It even worked against Stingray, which basically had no way of quickly breaking it. Oh, and by the way, something I haven't even mentioned about Baller is Special Power made all these issues even worse with it, since it increased both the health of the Baller and the explosion radius. Seeing this thing just run through tanking damage and putting a giant explosion in the field was incredible. incredibly annoying. If you wanted weapons that did more than just spam as many ballers as humanly possible though, the other options you would see sometimes would be the L3, which was close to Aerospray in terms of spamming since it was 170p and was a slightly better main weapon, with a pretty good kit. Remember, Curling Bomb's kind of broken right now. Other than that though, some niche options were a Lunar Blaster on a few very specific short range maps and 52 Gal, which isn't as good as it was after all the buffs and had a point sensor, though I guess the sensor would help with Ray if you really needed it. While these two broken specials were annoying, there were at least a few other decent options. Splattershot was a good option to round out comp since it had nice paint and the burst bomb could easily synergize with everything else, as well as working pretty well with the buff splashdown, though again, this will be more prominent next patch. Another newer option was the Splat Brella. This weapon had decent paint and was pretty fast at getting rain at 160 points for special with a sprinkler, and rain spam was quite good, making this a nice supportive option. The big thing it had going for it though was Baller. Brella's shield at the time could actually fully tank Baller with HP left over, making it pretty solid at dealing with it. That said, the main weapon is so much weaker in fighting power. The shield is incredibly slow and the damage is even weaker than it was after its damage nerf later into the game's life. So that on top of being a brand new weapon that people didn't really know very well, made it relatively uncommon. By the way, did I say a few decent options at the start of this paragraph? Because I lied. That's about it. I guess it's more weapons than last time though. I mean, I only talked about 4 of them back then, but even then, I'd gladly take Armor's semi-invincibility over the Death Beam and Unstoppable Giant Bomb. Well, at least with the speed of patches in this game, we didn't have to wait long for version 1.4, which had, oh my god, there's so many changes, guys. Alright, let's just focus on the nerfs to our current meta overlords. First up is Baller. L3 would get its special cost cut back by about 10 points for special, and Aerospray just got a huge painting nerf. I get it was common, but like, this was very clearly Baller's fault. Several weapons would also get a net 30% damage increase to Baller, including some other specials getting even more damage to it, which funny enough included Baller itself. This special would also be louder and no longer have a major radius increase with special power-up, which brought Baller in line for the time being, though it was still a very solid special. Next up is Stingray. Machine got slightly less paint and plus 20 points for special. Nice. Now for Stingray itself. It got buffed. Yeah, I don't know why, but now it's easier to see people through walls, and it shreds Baller twice as fast. The only thing that was a reasonable counter to it before. Great! So every Ray weapon I talked about before will still be even more relevant going forward. Pretty much exclusively because they have Ray. How amazing. We are nowhere near getting through this patch though, and like with last time, these nerfs wouldn't be the defining part about it, because we have so many insane buffs to talk about that wouldn't just be important for the meta coming up now, but a lot of them would continue to be relevant much later into the game and series history. But we'll have to get into that more next time. Thanks for watching.